Fight for Freedom, True Stories of American Warriors, The Call to Battle. In the deep, wild woods of the Appalachian Mountains, where the trees whisper ancient stories and the winds carry tales of long-forgotten times, there was a time when freedom was not just a word, but a battle, a fight fought by those who had nothing left to lose but their honor. It was in the year 1776, at the heart of America's struggle for independence, when the air was thick with tension and the land was scarred with the marks of war. The soil beneath the feet of every settler and warrior alike had been soaked with the blood of the fallen, each drop a testament to the cost of freedom. Among the brave men and women of this fledgling nation, there was one warrior whose name echoed across the mountains and valleys: Warren Hale. Warren was not a man born of privilege or noble blood, nor was he a scholar of the great halls. He was a simple man born to the harsh, unforgiving lands of the frontier. Raised by his father, a hardened soldier of fortune, Warren knew the taste of struggle, the smell of gunpowder, and the sting of a battle-worn soul. But most of all, he knew the unyielding call for freedom, a call that coursed through his veins like fire, burning bright in the darkest of times. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, Warren stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley below. He could hear the distant sound of drums, the rhythm of war calling his name. "The time has come," he whispered to the wind. It was not just a war for independence, but a battle for the very soul of the land. Native tribes, too, had been caught in the upheaval, torn between the settlers and their ancient ways, their own struggle for survival entwined with the fate of the land. Warren knew that the path to freedom would not be one of simple victories, but one of sacrifice, cunning, and the strength to face enemies both seen and unseen. As the moon rose high in the sky, casting its silver glow upon the earth, Warren gathered his band of men, fighters, hunters, and survivors who had joined his cause in the quest for freedom. Each man, born of the wilderness, was as wild and untamable as the land they fought for. They had been called together by the stirring words of a woman, a leader in her own right, Sachemaiana, a fierce and revered native chief. Sachemaiana was a force to be reckoned with. Known for her wisdom, her courage, and her deep connection to the spirits of the earth, she had long fought to protect her people from the encroaching tide of settlers. But as the winds of change howled louder, she knew that her fate, too, was tied to the land's new future. Ayana's message was simple: the time has come for us to unite, or be lost forever in the pages of history. Warren and Ayana had forged an unlikely alliance, bound not by blood, but by a shared cause, a cause that transcended the barriers between settler and native, between warrior and protector. The first light of dawn had barely begun to touch the horizon when Warren and his warriors set out towards the encroaching British forces. Their journey took them through thick forests and across treacherous rivers, all the while whispering the tales of their ancestors, the great warriors who had fought before them. Stories of Tecumseh, the Shawnee chief, whose spirit still roamed the woods like a silent guardian, and Johnny Appleseed, who had planted seeds of hope and courage across the land. As they approached the British camp, the tension in the air was thick, as if the very earth itself was holding its breath. The warriors moved with the grace of shadows, unseen and unheard by the sentries guarding the fortifications. Warren's heart raced as he remembered the lessons his father had taught him: the art of battle, the silent strike, and the unspoken trust between warrior and land. Just as they were about to launch their first strike, a chilling howl split the night air. It was a cry unlike any other, a sound that echoed deep in the bones, stirring something primal within the warriors. A creature, tall and towering, with eyes that burned like embers, stepped from the shadows. It was the Wendigo, a spirit from the old stories, the guardian of the forgotten places in the forest. The very air around them seemed to freeze as the Wendigo's cold gaze fixed upon Warren, as though it recognized him, knew him from a past long buried. With a voice that sounded like the wind howling through the trees, the Wendigo spoke: "The fight for freedom is not just one of men, but one of spirits. Be prepared to face both in this battle, for neither the living nor the dead will rest until the land is free." The warriors stood frozen, the weight of the creature's words heavy upon them. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as Warren and Ayana exchanged a glance, their shared understanding clear. This was more than a fight against the British, it was a fight for the land itself, for the spirits that guarded it, and for the future of their people. The Battle of Shadows. As the eerie howl of the Wendigo faded into the night, Warren and Ayana stood, frozen in place, their hearts thundering in their chests. The Wendigo's presence, a creature of myth and legend, had instilled an ancient fear that even the fiercest warriors had not dared to confront. But in this moment, the line between legend and reality had blurred. The Wendigo, towering above them, its glowing eyes piercing the darkness, took a slow step forward. Its form was shrouded in mist, its skin like the bark of a twisted ancient tree, and its breath was a cold, biting wind that carried the scent of death. The warriors, gripped by the creature's presence, dared not move. Ayana, her face set in determination, stepped forward and spoke in a voice that cut through the thick silence. "We do not fear the dead," she said, her words strong and unwavering. "We fight for the living, for the land that is ours by right. If you are a spirit of the land, then you must know that we, too, are bound to this place." The Wendigo's eyes flickered as if considering her words. Then, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, it spoke. "Then prove it. Show me your strength, your resolve. Fight not only for your freedom, but for the spirit of the land that binds you." With that, the Wendigo turned and disappeared into the mist, its form vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. But its challenge had been made clear. This battle would not just be fought with weapons, but with the spirit and resolve of those who fought for it. Warren knew that this was no ordinary battle. The Wendigo's appearance was a sign that the fight for freedom would demand more than they had prepared for. It was a test of their will, their unity, and their belief in the cause they fought for. This was a battle for the soul of the land itself. As the warriors regrouped, their faces set with determination, Warren addressed them. "The Wendigo's challenge is not just a warning, it is a call to action. We fight not only for our lives but for the future of this land. We fight for our children, our families, and for the very spirit of this place." Ayana, her hand resting on the hilt of her tomahawk, nodded. "We will not let this land fall to foreign hands or restless spirits. We will show them what it means to fight for something greater than ourselves." The warriors, emboldened by her words, prepared for the next phase of their mission. The British forces were not far off, and every step they took forward now carried with it the weight of the battle they had been called to fight, not just against human invaders, but against the very essence of the land's history and spirit. As they approached the British camp, the fog grew thicker, and the sounds of the night seemed to grow more distant. The trees around them creaked, their branches reaching out like long fingers in the dark. The air was thick with tension, and the warriors moved as one, their steps silent but purposeful. They reached the edge of the British camp, where the sentries stood guard, oblivious to the approaching threat. Warren, his eyes sharp and focused, gave the signal to move. The warriors, using the shadows to their advantage, crept forward, their movements like whispers in the wind. But just as they were about to strike, a figure stepped from the shadows. A man, tall and imposing, with a scar running down his face and a cold glint in his eyes. His uniform marked him as a high-ranking officer in the British Army. "I knew you'd come," the officer said, his voice low and menacing. "The rebels, the traitors. But you won't win this war, not while I still breathe." Warren's hand tightened around the hilt of his blade, but before he could respond, the ground beneath their feet trembled. A low growl echoed through the woods, and the air itself seemed to thicken with a primal energy. The Wendigo had returned, and this time it was not alone. Out of the mist emerged more figures, ghostly warriors, ancient spirits of the land, each one bearing the marks of time. Cracked armor, weathered faces, and eyes that glowed with an eerie light. These were the forgotten souls, the ancient protectors of the land, summoned by the Wendigo's call. The British officer's face turned pale as he saw the spirits, his sword slipping from his hand in fear. But he quickly regained his composure and raised his weapon, preparing for battle. "This is your end, rebels?" he shouted, charging forward. But Warren, undeterred, raised his hand. "Hold," he commanded. "This battle is not ours alone." With that, Ayana stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. "The land has spoken. The spirits of this place rise to fight with us. We will not fall." At her words, the ghostly warriors charged alongside them, a tide of spirits moving through the mist. The clash of steel rang out as the battle began, but it was not just the warriors who fought, it was the land itself, rising in defense of those who would protect it. Warren fought with all his might, his sword flashing in the moonlight as he struck down the British officer's men. The Wendigo, a towering figure of fury, tore through the ranks of the enemy, its supernatural strength overwhelming all who came near. But as the battle raged on, Warren could feel the pull of the Wendigo's power. The creature was not just a guardian, it was a force of nature, and its strength was both a blessing and a curse. With every blow, the land seemed to grow more restless, as if the very earth beneath them was alive, watching, waiting. As the British forces were pushed back, Warren and Ayana stood side by side, their eyes locked on the creature that had guided them to this victory. The Wendigo's glowing eyes met theirs, and for a moment there was silence. "You have proven your strength," the Wendigo's voice echoed in their minds. "But the battle is far from over. The land will test you again." With those words, the Wendigo disappeared into the mist, leaving behind only the memory of its challenge and the lingering sense of the land's power. The unseen enemy. The morning after the battle, the air was thick with the scent of smoke and blood. The warriors, though victorious, stood amidst the remnants of the fight, their eyes scanning the horizon. The British forces had been driven back, but the Wendigo's ominous words echoed in Warren's mind, and the land itself seemed restless, as if waiting for something else to come. Warren stood at the edge of the battlefield, his gaze lost in the distance. His sword, now heavy in his hand, felt like it weighed 100 pounds. He had fought many battles, but this one had felt different. More than just a physical fight. It had been a battle for the soul of the land itself. And the victory, while sweet, was not the end. Ayanna approached him quietly, her face etched with the weariness of battle, but her eyes unwavering. She had always been a woman of strength and wisdom, and now, more than ever, she understood that the fight was far from over. "You've been quiet since the Wendigo spoke," she said softly, standing beside him. "What weighs on your mind, Warren?" Warren sighed, his breath heavy. "The Wendigo's words. The land will test you again. I can feel it. There's something deeper at play here, something we've yet to face. We've won the battle, but the war is far from over." Ayanna nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. "The spirits of the land do not speak in riddles without reason. This is only the beginning. But you are not alone in this fight, Warren. We have the strength of the warriors, and the spirits of this land are with us." As the warriors gathered, their faces stained with the marks of battle, Warren addressed them. "The British are only one enemy we face. The Wendigo warned us that there are greater challenges ahead. This land has its own protectors, and they will not rest until we prove ourselves worthy. We fight not just for freedom, but for the soul of the earth itself." With those words, the warriors, united in purpose, set off once again, their steps light but determined. They knew the land held more secrets, more dangers, and more spirits than they had yet encountered. But they were not afraid. For they were not just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for the future of the land, for their people, and for the freedom that would define their nation. As they journeyed deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to close in around them. The air grew heavy with the weight of ancient spirits, the whispers of the past filling their ears. Warren could hear the faint sound of drums in the distance, a rhythm that seemed to pulse from the heart of the earth itself. They had reached the heart of the wilderness, the place where the land's power was strongest. It was here, in the ancient woods, that the true test awaited them. And it came, not as a visible enemy but as a force of nature, something far older and more dangerous than anything they had ever faced. The trees themselves seemed to come alive, their branches twisting and reaching out like the arms of vengeful spirits. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the very earth seemed to fight against them. Warren and Ayanna led their warriors forward, knowing that they could not turn back now. The battle was not just against an army, it was against the forces of nature itself, against the very land that had given them life. But the warriors pressed on, their resolve unshaken. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the wind howled around them, a voice that seemed to call out to them from the depths of the earth. The warriors moved as one, their hearts beating in unison with the rhythm of the land. And then, as if summoned by the earth itself, a great shadow emerged from the trees. It was the Great Bear, a creature of legend, larger than any bear that had ever walked the earth. Its fur was as dark as the night, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. It stood tall, towering over the warriors, its roar shaking the very ground beneath them. The Great Bear was a guardian of the land, a spirit that had long protected the wilderness from intruders. It was not an enemy that could be defeated with swords and arrows. It was a creature of the earth, a force of nature that could only be overcome by strength of will. Warren stepped forward, his heart steady, his eyes locked on the creature. "We do not come to harm the land," he said, his voice strong. "We come to protect it, to fight for its freedom just as we fight for ours." The Great Bear's gaze softened, its eyes locking with Warren's. For a long moment, the two stood in silence, the weight of the land's history and power hanging between them. Then the Great Bear lowered its massive head as if acknowledging Warren's words. With a final roar, the Great Bear turned and disappeared into the forest, its form blending with the shadows of the trees. The warriors stood in awe, the earth beneath their feet no longer trembling. Warren, his heart pounding in his chest, turned to Ayanna. "We have passed the test," he said, his voice filled with awe. "But the fight is not over. We will continue to protect this land, not with weapons, but with the strength of our hearts." Ayanna smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "The spirits are with us, Warren. The land will be free." As the warriors made their way back, their hearts lighter than they had been in days, Warren knew that the fight for freedom was far from over. But with the land behind them and the strength of the spirits at their side, they were ready for whatever came next.